Play, Watch, Listen is a video game industry podcast, mostly from video game developers Mike Bithell, Austin Wintory, and myself, Alana Pierce. This very independent podcast and every other podcast that I make are brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Thank you for supporting the show, for allowing us to make something totally ad-free, meaning that we don't really have to worry about views or chasing trending topics or anything like that. It is such a privilege. But whether you support the show on Patreon or not, we hope you enjoy the episode. Here it is.
You go watch a jazz performance and someone has a solo in the middle, the whole band will keep playing, but you always give a big applause to the soloist after their bit. There's all this, we've built up all this ridiculous decorum in the world of going to see a classical orchestra. Even just the idea of we're going to play a 4-movement Beethoven symphony, they will shame you for clapping in between movements. So it's like, you will clap once in 40 minutes. God help you if you like the parts in between, or really God help. In fact, to prove that point, I did a show once with the Colorado Symphony where I brought in a bunch of music from composer colleagues of mine, to help make it a big menagerie of video game music. And I can't remember who it was, a composer buddy, I think it was someone from Blizzard, happened to know someone in the orchestra just by coincidence. And so we did his music, and he emailed me after, and he goes, it just shows you how much a stick in the mud some of these musicians can be, even though they can be so brilliant as performers, but they just have this strain. They've just gotten warped in what they think this is all about, in my opinion, because the person wrote to him and said, oh, the show was so annoying. The audience would not stop making noise and clapping and cheering. And so he emailed me back and was like, I hear the show went great. Here's how I know. And yeah,
that's wild. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's fortunately that generation is starting to kind of retire out, and the younger, like I had that Serbia show I was on, I think it was that one, some recent concert I had in Europe. We did our rehearsals, and then we think we had 2 concerts in a row, and all went great. And then during the middle of the second show, so I'm like many hours in now, several days into interacting with these musicians. One of the violinists pulled me aside and rolls up his sleeve and goes, I want to show you something. And he had the words in French, I was born for this, from Journey, tattooed on his forearm.
Wow.
And he was like, I've had this on there for 10 years. He was like, this is part of why I'm a violinist or something. And it was like one of those surreal, absolutely mind-blowing things. And you see more and more, people saying like, oh, I picked up the French horn because I heard the theme to Uncharted or whatever. You know what I mean? That sort of
rules.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that what it's all about?
Completely.
Like, if anything, it's to like inspire other people creatively. What other purpose would you even want to do literally anything? Like, if not to like pass on a feeling or a message, then to like get people to be professional musicians? That fucking rules.
Yeah, the nonprofit that I'm on the board of, years ago, we do an annual fundraiser gala where we'll invite some composer, usually it's a composer or someone kind of here in LA, who we will honor in the hope that they'll, bring their friends and stuff, and we can raise a bunch of money for our K-5 music program. And one year we were honoring John Williams, and his people were like, by the way, don't go bug, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and stuff. Like, Williams will show up, and he conducted our kids like from our schools and stuff, and it was a really awesome evening. But
amazing.
Yeah.
We had
As
some
a kid, can you imagine?
Oh, yeah. It was amazing. Yeah, it really was. It was like, it was a special night for sure. But we also had some pretty substantial parameters on what we were allowed to do as part of his team. Like, because some other folks are like we also did one with Michael Giacchino once, and he's like, I'm down with anything. So there's a bit of a wide range of opinions on the subject. In any case, because and I was in charge of making I volunteered to do the little video package that we show right before we say, okay, and now everybody welcome out, the maestro John Williams. And there were a lot of rules on what I wasn't allowed to kind of film. And so I took basically the attitude of what you just said, Alana, where it was, rather than make a video saying how awesome John Williams is, because the world has 50,000 of those, I would try to find examples of, it's not that he is great, it's that he makes other people want to make stuff, which is like, in a sense, an even more powerful contribution. It's one thing to create great art. It's another to inspire millions of people to want to make art in their own right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and musicians who picked up instruments. How many millions of French horn players were made by the binary sunset scene in the original Star Wars in 77, that kind of thing. We see it more and more. I literally had lunch today with a composer friend who got his doctorate at Juilliard, and he was saying how, when he was there as a student a number of years ago, he wanted to write his doctoral thesis on the film composer Tom Newman, who did like Wall-E and 1917 and several of the recent Bond films, so all of Sam Mendes's movies, basically. Amazing composer. American Beauty, Shawshank Redemption, like one of the greatest in the industry by far. One of the greatest of all time, without question. And he was saying how there's, trepidation among the academic elites of an old guard institution like that. And but he said, since then, he's like, it's one of the most read dissertations on file for them, and that there's like every new composer is there because they want to do movies and they want to do video games and
true. It's like a whole new wave, right, of like media. I mean, Rahul became an actor because of Star Wars. That's like, that's been a thing since before then, but I guess it's a franchise that probably like was seen as
Anthony
not
Daniels
cinema at some
he
point.
saw Anthony Daniels and was like,
exactly. He was like,
that's
it. I'm doing it. And here he is.
That's it. He's captured me. But that's where classical music is being. I appreciate that there is still people composing classical music not for soundtracks, but the bulk, especially commercially, of music in the classical genre is being done as soundtrack work, right? Like that's the.
If you define classical as like orchestral.
I guess I am, which is an ignorant position, but like the kind of stuff you would learn at Juilliard. Let's say that. Like,
I would say the stuff. I mean, there's tons of new operas, symphonies, chamber works. Sure. Song cycles. There's a whole language out there, and there's a bunch of folks who do it, and there's some really great composers. There's also some folks who drift fairly effortlessly between worlds, like Michael Abels, who does Jordan Peele's scores. He won a Pulitzer like 2 years ago for his opera that played here at the LA Opera called Omar. He's a little bit of an exception in terms of success in both film and to win a Pulitzer for an opera. Like, not a lot of people who've done that.
It must be tough to like come up with a new opera and sell it, and classical music, I would have thought, when so much of the existing stuff is public domain, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like if I wanted to use Vivaldi, one of the Four Seasons, if I wanted to put Winter in a movie, I'm allowed to do that as long as I record it myself, right? It's the individual.
That last part is the key.
That's the big one that people.
The orchestras are. They have copyrights to their recordings, but
correct. Yeah,
but the actual composition you can make.
The IP itself becomes public domain.
Yeah.
After a certain point, in the same way that like even now, like movies and characters and things are starting to enter public domain. Like Winnie the Pooh, or it was a recent one, obviously, and there are characters and stuff where the character might be, or the script, the idea might be, the IP itself enters the public domain, but that doesn't mean that you could just put the footage. From that.
You mentioned Bond. Bond is very close. Bond is
from the novel.
Really?
The very first one, and what that's going to lead to is the really interesting stuff, which is what Austin's saying, of kind of what is and isn't included, and people fucking that up, which is fun. So, for example,
bunch of lawyers are very excited to watch people make this mistake.
The one that I love is Robin Hood, which obviously is very, very, very out of copyright. It's a medieval story, but there was a 1960s TV show that introduced the idea of a Moorish character who was his friend, who he brought back from the Crusades. That had never been part of the original legend.
Like the Morgan Freeman character, you mean, from the
And
Prince
the creators of the TV show agreed with that read, because basically the makers of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves assumed that was part of the original legend and therefore outside of copyright, so ended up in court with the TV team because that was their character. They called him a different name. What's interesting is now subsequent.
Was there a lawsuit? Is that like you saying that they had to pay?
There was a lawsuit. I don't know if they won or lost. What's interesting,
I never heard this.
Subsequent
before.
Robin Hood adaptations, some have included a Moorish character. So whatever the outcome of that case was, clearly there's been either they lost or.
So sorry, the
there's been
technicality there is
accommodations made.
that Robin Hood is public domain. The characters surrounding him are not.
No, this was a character that was in the production.
He was
company
introduced
making-
later.
It was introduced in the 60s. So
I see. I see.
What's going to happen with Bond, for example, it's going to be really interesting, is because they will go out of they will go out into public domain sequentially based on the books.
Wow.
Once Bond is out into the public domain, that's great. But if you want him to drive an Aston Martin, obviously, well, that's
Wear an Omega
trademark. But or
Felix Leiter.
Felix is in Casino Royale, so he'd be fine.
Okay.
But Scaramanda, something like Octopussy, like you are
Goldfinger, yeah.
Exactly, like there's going to be Winnie the Pooh came out of into the public domain, which is why there's like some crappy
horror
Winnie
movies.
the Pooh horror movies.
Yeah.
But if they do anything that is from the Disney movies rather than the original books, they'll be in trouble, presumably.
Yeah, that must
Mickey
be
Mouse
such
is now
I know
public
that's crazy.
or is coming out of public
Yeah,
domain,
soon.
but not obviously subsequent versions. So
Or like Steamboat
Mickey Mouse is
Willie as a
fine,
film.
But if you put yellow shoes on him or whatever, if you do things that were part of the design from later, that would be a problem.
I
If you give him
believe
a
Disney
voice,
tried to
that would be a
change the
problem.
law specifically for Mickey. I think that's
Disney
the thing.
have sequentially pushed back copyright, and this is just this is no public record. This is not me saying this is a good or a bad thing. Disney have sequentially pushed back the amount of the public domain specifically to keep Mickey out of it as long as they could. Yeah,
Which is
That's
complicated because
been a
Mickey's
public
their mascot.
record.
It's complicated. But, sorry, it says he entered public domain on January 1st, 2024. This means anyone can now copy, share, and adapt that iteration of the character, but
That
it's only
specific.
Steamboat Willie.
Yes. And
Which
if
is-
you do anything that is not in that original cartoon, there's something that is later from the character. Yeah,
Has to be black and white. Can't do very much. Yeah, that's crazy.
I think I might be right in saying Sherlock Holmes is an interesting one because it's half in and half out. I think I'm right about that. I think
Why?
Sherlock Holmes. There's some later Sherlock Holmes books that are not yet in the public domain. So there are specific characters and situations. I think is Irene Adler is not in public domain yet. There's parts of the mythology that you can't do without.
Sherlock Holmes' stories are now all in the public domain as of 2023.
Oh, I'm out.
But no,
Yeah.
you might not be. Free for anyone to use adapt. Trying to find up if there's. It's just
I
the
was going to
books
use the
though.
example of the TV show, the Benedict Cumberbatch TV show, and the Robert Downey Jr. movie came out in that window where the Sherlock Holmes books were half in and half out. So I know in both cases they actually licensed the rights to Sherlock Holmes just to avoid problems altogether. So both of them were licensed. Basically, probably the last licensed Sherlock Holmes material, if 23 was when it all ended. Which you do sometimes see. You do sometimes when something's about to go into the public domain, you'll see a flurry of them making use of that.
Yeah, there's a
Interesting.
So essentially, if you're the estate, that's your last chance to make as much
Make money
as you
off
can,
it.
essentially.
I wonder if
Yeah.
the Bond thing is like some in ways related to the family selling him off, like selling off the rights to the films because it's not really
But then
valuable
they
to them
also
anymore.
different things went to different people. I'm going to go one more boring.
No,
fact
this is
about
super
IP
interesting.
ownership. So Bond's an interesting one because Spectre was not. So Spectre were the bad guys in the books. The use of Spectre in the movies has been really interesting because essentially, at the point, so the Broccolis end up with the. This is literally there's hundreds of pages of books about the history of the IP ownership of James Bond, but it's the short version is the Broccolis had the rights, which is how they made the movies for so long. But there was before Fleming died, he co-wrote a movie screenplay with someone else. Just basically before he got his shit together and sold the rights cleanly to the Broccolis. So there was one guy in Hollywood who basically had the rights to make one specific Bond movie.
Wow.
And that caused infinite problems because he had them in perpetuity. And I think he did make one, which was he made Sean Connery. There's one Sean Connery Bond movie that wasn't produced by the Broccolis.
No
That
way.
Screenplay.
That's wild.
And then he held on to the rights, and I can't remember the specifics of it, but basically the Spectre, the big baddies at Spectre were locked into that script, so the movie guys couldn't use them forever. And then those rights eventually, either ran out or was sold back to the Broccoli's, which is why you see Spectre come in towards the end of the Daniel Craig era. Spectre's been in the books the whole time. They've been the baddies forever in Bond books. So yeah, there's lots of it. It's gone back and forth. There's a million. The history of that IP ownership is interesting, and now obviously all of it's sat with Amazon.
It's so interesting because it's so complicated. Especially like the way that Lord of the Rings has been fractured is a really interesting one.
Yeah.
People own film rights, people own TV rights, people own likeness rights, people own book rights, people own the rights to have the miniature figures, people own the rights to have the miniature figures based on the likeness from the movies. Other people don't. Like, it's
really
so...
good time to be the Tolkien estate, I suspect.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
didn't they
wild.
sell to Embracer a chunk of it?
I think
who-
they may have for video games. Yeah,
Whoever-
I mean,
whoever
we got
owns
Gollum,
it.
isn't it?
I think Embracer didn't Embracer get everything. I can't remember. There was that period where Embracer was buying absolutely everything.
Yeah,
I
I had this period of time where I was like, maybe Embracer will, some of those IPs have been dormant. Maybe they'll pick them up and make stuff. And look how that's gone. But off of this,
It's
I mean, my
coming
next
on, it's coming.
any minute now, Deus Ex.
Now.
My next YouTube video is going to be about this, but I was curious to see if either of you have any opinions. Have you heard about the Stop Killing Games petition?
Yeah, I got accidentally attached to that story for a couple of days. Yeah,
That doesn't really surprise me. I understand there's nothing that you can really say about your attachment to it, but
No.
have you heard about it, Austin?
I only circuitously, insofar as I've seen, the what seems to periodically surface. Like, this didn't strike me as a totally new phenomenon in the way that people complain about, games being able to, like, depending on online connections being shut down. You can't just put in a disc and play a game, and sort of bemoaning the old days where, the lack of ownership of a title.
Yep.
It's just so keenly felt. Something vaguely along these lines, but I haven't followed it much more closely than what I just said.
That's effectively the criticism, yeah, and like fucking Spec Ops: The Line. You can't get that game anymore. That's crazy to me. That game can't be purchased anymore. Like,
Right.
it just is so nuts because it's like, I feel like such an iconic, like, even in terms of conversation, Spec Ops: The Line is so relevant, and it feels like such a huge loss. Like, it's wild, but
It's also the multiplayer component, right? So if you bought the game, you might still be able to load it up. You might still have access to it, but if the server's no longer there and
Yeah.
plans were not made to navigate that to like a peer-to-peer, you're screwed.
yes, and from my understanding, so this petition is to prevent that from happening, right? That's the whole purpose of it. They're starting with the EU because EU's actually, like, generally very consumer friendly. We've accomplished
Very
great things.
pro-consumer.
Yeah, from like the iPhone.
That's why we had to leave, Alana. That's why we had to leave. Too pro-consumer, in my opinion.
You guys are pro consumer though too. The Apple iPhone charging lightning cables becoming replaced by USB-C was English. I think that was an English lawsuit, and then like that was
I think we took
anti-consumer.
credit. Was it English? I thought that was EU again.
It may have
We
been.
just
I
kind of
don't
jumped
know.
on. I don't know.
It's same thing, really. Pre-Brexit,
I
whatever.
think of it as the same thing.
Yeah.
People, yeah.
R.I.P. dude.
More contentious
It's
issue.
one of
I
the
know, it sucks.
dumbest fucking things any country has done in recent history. It's so fucking stupid. Anyway, basically they raised the petition with the EU. It's got 1.4 million signatures, which means that the initiative is like open for discussion. The minimum that they had to get is 1 million, which is pretty wild.
It's
But
amazingly
the whole
impressive in terms of getting an audience. Were you tracking that? Like, was that something that just they steadily did over time, or did they get a groundswell? Like, what was how do you get to 1.4 million on a petition?
my answer to that would be internet drama.
Okay.
So
With the pirate guy, right?
yes, pirate software. So because I
Yeah.
I hate watching YouTube videos. I hate it. Which is wild because I make them. I'm aware. I will avoid it at all cost in favor of reading. I paid somebody to go watch the pirate software stuff and the rebuttals to write me like a little essay that breaks down the drama because I didn't want to watch the videos. So I literally gave somebody money to be like, I can't fucking do this to myself. It makes me want to blow my brains out. Explain what happened.
Yeah.
So it seems like the drama.
How do you
with,
reconcile that? Not to derail you here, but how do you reconcile that with the fact that you make so much stuff like that? Does that?
Well, she doesn't make like.
No, you're not making like gossip pieces or whatever.
Gossipy stuff.
No, I don't mean to. I just mean you make it sound like YouTube videos in general you're allergic to. Am I misreading?
I'm allergic to video content. Is what
Yeah.
it is. I won't watch Twitch streams. I'll listen to a podcast, but I won't watch one.
So why aren't you
How do I
releasing
reconcile that?
leaflets instead of
So it's because I enjoy making them. In that, like, when I'm making a YouTube video, it's just me effectively, at this point, I've, like, fully transitioned to doing video essays, so they're, like, the same level of research. I interview people, I get a bunch of data together, and I write them the exact same way that I would have written a feature at IGN. And then I record it, and I have a teleprompter, and I use my script, and I record myself doing it. So I don't mind the process of making it. I recognize that the audience finds a lot of value in watching video, because I'm the outlier and that most people prefer watching video. I'm happy to give people the information. So it's like, I don't watch any of them. But if I were like making like different YouTube content, I would have to. Like if I were making stuff that was like supposed to be like more lifestyle stuff or like a lot of the other YouTube content, it would be different. But I'm just making video essays. So yeah, it's, I don't know. I feel like it's
your
a specific
primary
branch.
media you're discussing is games, not other YouTube. You're not engaged.
Yeah, totally. If I was talking about YouTube, I'd have to watch more YouTube for sure. 'Cause that would be crazy. But it's really just video games in the games industry. But I'm aware that it's weird, and I don't think most of my content
it's not that
is
it's
good.
automatically. It's not that it's intrinsically some weird like hypocrisy. It just It's first I've heard you say that, so I was fascinated by the.
So I will concede that I don't think I'm a very good content creator, and I don't doubt that some of that probably comes from the fact that I'm not watching content creators. Like, I don't think I'm good at Twitch streaming. I have zero doubt that that is a product of me not watching Twitch streamers who are good at it to learn from. But it's also not my career goal, so I'm not trying to,
Understood.
Yeah.
In any case, I'm derailing you, so continue.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate you acknowledge that you derailed me, Austin. I really appreciate it.
But I did
Thank you
give you
so much.
permission to continue.
That's the important thing. That's the important thing.
Basically, yes,
As you were.
I think that they managed to accomplish 1 million due to some internet drama with a content creator who used to be a Blizzard developer who was against the initiative, very controversially, and he is a very popular Twitch streamer. So
Right.
I would say the size of his platform being against it caused a whole bunch of controversy and then made much like very popular content creators make content about it. So it blew up because of that, which is kind of a reality of the internet. Like things kind of need drama to
The
succeed. I think
Streisand
that's-
effect.
I was going to
Sort
say it's
of.
Streisand, isn't it?
It's definitely a weird thing about like I
was
know a
the-
lot of successful Twitch streamers at this point. I'm strongly of the mind that you can only succeed on Twitch if you have some level of like reality TV show style drama ongoing. Like it is the only way to break out on that platform. There are some tiny
It
exceptions.
sounds exhausting.
For the most part, you have to like argue with people, you have to collaborate with other popular people. I think it's like incredibly difficult to succeed on Twitch if you're just one person doing it solo. It's wild. It's
Me and
awful.
Austin, I think we'll keep making video games. That seems easier.
I think you guys would be great at Twitch streaming, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Why? Because you think we're prone to drama and reality?
Yeah,
TV?
because we'd fuck up immediately and
blame
create
everyone. Yeah, exactly.
Conversations, yeah. The thing gamers don't understand.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do that.
So wait, what was the argument against this that caused that? What's the like bullet points of the logic behind it, or the the claim?
Sorry, I just got very dizzy all of a sudden. Okay, I'm fine.
Wait for it.
His
Wait for it.
I'll just pass out. That's the drum we need to bring to Play Watch Listen together.
That's your criticism of his position. Is it makes you dizzy?
Well, if you're,
it is
if
sort
you're-
of complicated. So the first one is that he thinks that the current language is too vague, and that it can't apply to everyone. The second part, and I'm really paraphrasing here because I've like not properly read over the thing that the person sent me because I haven't started scripting the video yet. But is that some facets of it will prevent people from even making certain kinds of games. So it's potentially like limiting on the industry. I believe that's the position. But he's just like
because they wouldn't want to commit themselves to the back end requirements of it. They would
Yes,
just go,
but
well, fuck
the-
it, I won't do that.
the
then.
back end isn't actually asking that dev teams support it. It just is basically asking for like the way stuff used to be, is that people could host their own private servers at the very least. So it's like not really. It's asking for an ability to kind of like hand off hosting services, for example, but that is just kind of us reverting to the way things used to be. And I guess
Well,
it's
just to
complicated for
be-
licensing stuff too.
Yeah, well, licensing stuff license stuff but there's a different with licensing stuff. Stuff can be, let's say theoretically, one of us worked on a licensed game that was removed from Steam.
In theory.
It wouldn't necessarily be removed in theory, theoretically. Even if someone can buy it, if they own it, they can still play it. Like it's not, no one's taking away a product that's been sold, which I think this is
Spec
very
Ops: The
specifically
Line
that.
is like that too. I can still play it because I own it.
Cool, and that's to me that's fair enough. I don't think the audience. I would argue with the audience having a perpetual right to buy something. Well, no, actually, I mean, in an ideal world, no. But I can understand in a licensing context, there's complexities that would make that difficult. But in terms of the committing to this thing, just to discourse this, to me, this links up with the conversation around what's the shitty genre name people are giving to multiplayer indie games right now?
Friend slop?
Friend slop.
I've never
To
heard
me-
that.
It's funny.
Oh, it's such an offensive name.
Yeah.
What is even meant
so
by
it's
that?
specifically games that which is like crazy because it's true of all multiplayer games for a very long time. It's specifically games that are like perhaps a little janky, and the driving purpose of playing them is the experience that you have with your friends.
Like Among Us, kind of.
Sort of.
That kind of thing.
More like a game like Repo, which is like one of the most successful games in the last several years, or like the new one Peak. So it's like the driving force. Phasmophobia would probably count, like just where it's a group of people and the reason to play is because it's funny. But again, I would argue that's why people played DayZ. It's not
But
new.
also, like, I think the way this links up, the way I think
I also
that links
don't.
up
I don't.
with this.
Well, just
Go on.
sorry as a parentheses. I don't want to. I don't want to stop forward momentum here, but I
She pays someone to watch the videos.
yeah, exactly. Can I pay you to pay someone to go report back on this? I just, it's so funny to me that that's somehow a negative. That a game.
I don't think it was intended. I don't think it was intended. Was it intended as a negative? I think it's just a lazy
it's
term.
just a
It
cute little
sounds
jokey
offensive.
term.
Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
it's- Yeah.
So it's
But
like,
it
But developers,
is
we get
rude.
angsty around when people call
okay,
stuff slop.
got it.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not
Okay,
cool.
got it. Fair point. All right.
I think as well because everyone's saying AI slop. There's a
Right,
connotation
right.
theoretically there.
Well,
that
slop.
people are like-
I'd be hard pressed to name any context in which that's a praise.
It's not
It's like a praising term.
Praise.
I'm not want to talk about the podcast.
Yeah.
I think there's a.
It's not praise, but it's not an intended insult. So yeah.
So
Anyway, I give
I
you
think the way
permission to
this-
continue, Mike.
thank you. I think the way this links up, I think, like the and this is an original thought. I've seen people saying this online. You could make the case that those friend slop games are
Still good.
catering to an audience who wants multiplayer games that are not about all of the meta stuff, all the progression, all of the in-game purchases, all of the meta multiplayer pile-on. This seems similar and related in the sense of it is the audience saying, well, we want control over the games we play, basically. Once we've bought something, we expect to be able to use it and have a good time with it how we want to, rather than needing to be in your ecosystem.
It would seem to me
So I
that
can see there's a link, I think, there in terms of the sentiment.
if there was
Maybe a rebellion against multiplayer meta stuff.
It
I
would
don't know.
it would seem to me I'm not even under educated on this topic. I'm effectively totally non-educated, but just on a purely intuitive sense, it would seem that if nothing else, the idea that launching a game requires some kind of server ping just to launch, like it's not relying on anything remote. It's not relying on remote servers, but just, for example, I remember 10 years ago or so, I was at a friend's house and they dug up their old N64 because they wanted to play GoldenEye 64 multiplayer at a party, like 20 years after the fact. And the N64 still worked, so we were able to do it. And if that had required it to essentially send a signal to the mothership and it was like, this game doesn't exist anymore, and even though you have everything you need, I could see how that surely is the case with a lot of current games where you essentially need remote access, even though it's all the relevant data is local to your machine or to the disk. If it even is running off a disk, more likely it's just something installed on your computer. It makes total sense to me that saying that's stupid. I should be able to just play, like, if nothing else, if that's part of the crux of the gripe, it's hard to see what's
Well, platforms
limiting.
are smart. So a platform will it's very, very different. And I think it has come up quite recently with some games being pulled from Steam, but most of the time the platforms are smart enough that they know if you've purchased a video game and you can no longer play it through Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, you're going to be really pissed off about that, because essentially your thing has been taken away from you. So the platforms are very, and they contractually enforce this with developers, that we're not allowed, if someone buys our game, we can't take it away from them on those platforms. That is something that is like categorically, that's the paperwork you sign when you sell a game on one of these platforms confirms that is something you can't do. So this is specifically, I think, with games that have to ping the server to basically be in online mode, right? In order to ping the server to check the server's still there, to play multiplayer, to whatever. I don't think it's realistically a massive job to have a roadmap and a plan for shutting down the multiplayer game.
I don't think so either, especially if you start with it. And I think like the big core of this, like one of the big focuses of it is like DRM. Basically, it's just the idea that like it prevents publishers from shutting down a game, or like preventing people from being able to play something when it is perfectly functional because of things like DRM. Especially if it costs devs nothing to maintain. No one is asking people to spend a whole bunch of money on it in an ongoing capacity. It is much more about allowing people to be able to continue running servers to play it themselves, for example.
I guess where I'd be curious.
It's very cheap.
Loads.
Well, I guess
not expensive games.
What that immediately makes my kind of radar ping about is if it does in fact cost developers nothing. I mean, because seemingly there would be no resistance otherwise, right? It must be hidden.
It costs something. No, there is a cost. There is a cost of you have to update the game to essentially you update the game to say you don't need
like
this
to
server ping
sunset
anymore.
out. Right.
You sunset it out. That is work for sure. There is some cost associated, but I feel like if it was something that you budgeted in and planned for,
well, it's not an ongoing cost though. It's not that it's not an ongoing cost.
It's just developer cost to
initially, right?
Yeah, you're paying for a patch
because like
the developer has to pay for that, or the publisher has to pay for that.
I remember when,
but it's not much.
I remember when we were working on Journey. All the design discussion was around it as a multiplayer game.
Well, yeah, you can't play Journey if the servers are offline.
You can. Well, I don't know if you can if Sony's servers are offline, but I know that if your PlayStation is like disconnected from the internet, the game will still run. That's because I remember that was a discussion. Because I remember
what happens to the
you just will play alone. That's you'll just be alone the whole time.
Yeah, okay.
The ironic thing was that Sony was the driving force for that, if memory serves, because I remember pitching a whole thing about making the music like wildly different. I mean, it is different when you're connected to someone else. It will change in real time if you disconnect from some, like if their internet goes down, the score will change for you. But I was pitching like a really elaborate version of that because the whole idea was it should feel almost like a crappy game if you're alone. And Sony was kind of like, well, now there's a lot of people that don't want to play online and kind of, talk some sense into me over the idea that, it should still be a good experience. Don't put all the eggs into the basket on a thing that's dependent on the internet. And it sounds in a way like that's in complete agreement with the gist of this petition and of this idea is like, if you can't connect, you're on an old PS3 that's, just sitting in a room somewhere with no Wi-Fi, no hard line or whatever, you should be able to play the game. At least in the case of Journey, I'm pretty sure there'd be no problem whatsoever. And that,
if you can play it offline, then you can play it no matter what, for sure.
Yeah, it didn't seem like a huge burden.
This doesn't affect a game that has and I don't think anyone's saying you should keep the servers running indefinitely.
They're not. That is like explicitly not the language. No.
They are saying
because that would be
you should leave things in a way that we can run peer to peer or whatever, which is not nothing. Like I definitely don't want to like. I'm sure there's multiplayer developers watching this who are like, it's not nothing to add peer to peer, but it's not an insane thing, especially if it's budgeted and planned for up front, and if you're going to have to do it.
Yeah, and it does feel a little crazy that it's legal, that people can buy a product and just have access revoked. And I get it from the publisher perspective, like why they would turn servers off if there's, 20 people playing something. Like I understand why they would do that, but those 20 people still paid for that video game. It is nuts that you
It's
have to take it
happening
away from you.
everywhere, right? Like, I was livid. I got my copy of What We Do in the Shadows, the movie, was removed from my iTunes account because they put it in as a different movie. I guess the ID changed or something, and my copy that I bought on iTunes of What We Do in the Shadows disappeared.
Really?
And I was
That sucks.
Yeah, I was so happens, but apparently it happens a lot. I called up Apple, said I bought this film, and they reminded me that I did not buy the film. I paid for a license to blah 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 blah. It's where it's all going. If you're not buying physical media, you're taking that risk, right?
Yeah, I just don't think you should be. Like, I agree.
Big argument in
you
favor of
are.
I agree,
physical
I don't
media,
think so.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have like Rahul keeps buying 4Ks. We have so goddamn many 4K discs now. It's more than we have
I
room
judge
for.
my vinyl collection is growing and growing and growing.
We do also have some vinyls, yeah. But that at least they can't take away from you. But it still feels like that is that way because sometimes technology progresses faster than legislation can catch up.
Absolutely.
Say
So it feels like
99%
something
of the time technology moves faster than legislation.
true, if not all of the time, really.
Yeah.
It's kind of by design. But that I
I'm
think
willing
that
to
that's
leave
something
1% of it for accidents,
just in
but
case.
otherwise,
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about it before on this show, right? That music is legally incredibly protected, mainly just because it's fucking existed so long.
Yeah,
essentially,
the
like, compared to
protections
all
have
other
been built in
media.
for ages. It just
well,
yeah,
it's also it was
like,
the front lines of all of this copyright. It was the first
Yeah.
thing because radio broadcasts and all that way predated television and
And before
movies.
radio, the scores, the printing. We've had this conversation. I'm sure we've had this conversation several times
Yep,
on the show and
yep.
off the show. But yeah,
selling
it's
of
like
sheet music was
Yeah.
basically the only that and performing were the only livelihoods for composers in pre-20th century.
crazy.
and games are going to have, hopefully over time, a similar thing of like it will bed in as a medium, and these kind of things may be one way that we build consumer confidence in them.
It's so interesting how this intersects with the seemingly very adjacent concern of the preservation of games,
Yes.
because
Sure.
that's so close in concept to this.
Yeah.
Just the very idea that it's so easy to lose them forever. It doesn't take long at all for there to be effectively no hardware lying around that can actually run a given title.
Yeah, it
is a weird thought, right? I've had that. Like,
It makes
like
it a very
my-
ephemeral industry. It's almost like feels
Yeah.
like games
Very
almost
temporary.
are closer to theater or something in that way, where you go, oh, if you weren't there, you just it's gone.
Well, you have the same thing now with like TV. Like, there's just Doctor Who episodes that nobody.
Right,
can
I've
watch
heard that.
anymore.
There's like whole
Yeah.
There's,
seasons
like-
that are gone.
Yeah, like, it's just because it was a TV show. Who's the fuck cares about a TV show 2 years from now?
When
It's the same thing.
interviewed a bunch of devs about this particular topic, I also asked, one of my questions was like, how do you feel about the current state of game preservation in general, is what I asked. And there was one reply that I thought was really interesting that I wouldn't publish because this person would definitely get flamed for their answer, but it was basically...
And their name is...
I'm not going to do that. It was
But I thought
basically
that
like...
would make us
Troy
more...
Baker? Was
It
it,
was
Troy?
Troy
Was it
Baker.
Troy?
Yeah.
It was Troy Baker.
It was basically along the lines of like, why do people... Why does game preservation matter so much? For what purpose? Like, there's a big hubbub about preserving a lot of games that a lot of people have no interest in playing. Like, there are things that, like, if we want to preserve every single game that comes out, it's now like 50 a week on Steam. Are we saying that we want to be able to access all of these games and that someone needs to stockpile every single one of them? And I was like, it's a good point.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
With history, you don't know
Yeah, I can
what's important
answer
Yeah,
that
true.
person's...
until later,
Yeah.
right?
I can answer that comment right here. I'm going to pull a
One of
biffle.
those games, one of those 50 games was made by someone who's going to become the most important game designer of a generation.
Yeah.
And you don't know it yet.
So my
go on,
friend
so-
Andrea on the board. This is me pulling a biffle. My friend
Do
who's
it.
on the board of the LA Opera, but also is in our world, co-founder of Ready at Dawn, and formerly Blizzard before that. We last
And also
season.
buff. I always need to give the context that he's jacked. He's
He
really
is a
muscly, which doesn't seem
full-blown
like a thing you would
bodybuilder.
expect from like
You never
a genius.
bring that up about me though on the show, Alana. You never point that out. To
You're
us.
just
I
naturally
do when you're not
buff.
here. Like a Mike
Okay.
Biffle.
He works
Buff.
real hard for
Thank
it.
you,
It's
thank
part
you,
of his.
thank you.
He is
earned part
huge,
of
which
his
is
living.
again crazy because he's so passionate about opera and he's so smart and he's such a nerd. Like he's just like such a cartoon of a
anomaly.
man. Yeah.
Anachronism.
He is,
Yeah.
yeah. No, you could go on and on. the LA Opera last season did a double billing under a performance banner, what they called Recovered Voices, I think was the name of it. It's James Conlon, the conductor's idea. And there's an Austrian composer named Alexander Zemlinsky who they did an opera. It's a short one, like it would be one that you would perform as the first half of a night and then intermission and then another short opera. That's part of what has limited it, because normally you know it's the whole show is like, you know, Carmen or whatever would be the entire production. But there are this small subgenre in the world of opera of these kind of half length or single act operas. Anyways, Zemlinsky did one called The Dwarf, and it's only been performed in the U.S. twice ever since it was written, and both times have been because of James Conlon and the LA Opera. This last year and 14 years before that, or 15 years before that, also LA Opera, and never anywhere else. Not in New York, not Chicago, not any of the other kind of big opera companies. Santa Fe has a massive opera festival every summer where they perform like a bunch of operas in a week long. It's like the Sundance in a way of opera. It happens in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Never been done there, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow.
I sat there in the dress rehearsal with Andrea, and both of us walked in going, I don't know what this is. I don't know much about this composer. It's a name I vaguely heard, but I don't know anything about his music. And within 15 seconds of the rehearsal, we were looking at each other going, holy shit, this is unbelievable. So I looked up on my phone, and it cost a pretty penny, but I was able to order the score. Like, this is the opera. And so this is a thing that
I see your point.
It is effectively vanished from civilization, and I cannot overstate how much this impacted me. This was so powerful.
And you just leave it on your desk?
It's because I've been analyzing it.
That's what Austin does when he analyzes things. He just,
That's how he is.
Every time you think I'm multitasking here, I'm just muting my mic and doing that. Yeah, but it was one of those where that the ability to be able to reach, even though it was a little tricky, you had to buy it from a European publisher and it was expensive and it took a while for it to show up. It was possible. You know what I mean? And I go, you know, if I really wanted to perform this, for example, I could, you know, bootstrap we could make that happen. It's rare, and no one would show up because no one knows what this is, but it's not that there's some technological barrier to it. So, and I get that. I get the preservation, the instinct to want to preserve. People spend
completely
thousands of hours of their life in I mean, people don't even like it when they work on a game and their feature ends up getting cut. You know, never mind. You make a thing, you pour a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 of your life into, and then, I mean, flash forward, if 10 years, imagine, let's pretend sometime in the next short-term future, Ken Levine's Judas comes out, you know, something he's spent a decade so far working on. And imagine if just 10 years after that, it's already impossible to find. A decade of one's life is a huge amount of time to just let a thing then vanish. You know, I get the instinct to say this is worth figuring out ways to somehow preserve.
Well, it's also worth saying it's absolutely achievable. Like, I think humans, we're very bad at gauging the viability of things that take multiple people to do. Right? If you say archive, there's 50 games coming out a day on Steam, archive them.
It's 50 a week right now.
50 a week right now. I can't do that, obviously. As an individual, I can't do that. So it seems impossible, but we're already doing that for lots of other things, like, you know, books, for example. Any book that is published goes in the library. ISBN, every individual ISBN number exists somewhere archived.
Every book that gets published goes in the library?
Yes. What? There's specific libraries, different nations maintain
like
them.
The Library of Congress, presumably here in the U.S.
Library of Congress, British Library here. Like, there's
how does that
published
work?
in the UK? Lots of very big rooms.
Yeah, but like I have friends who publish books that are just available on Amazon. Someone is.
So I'm not sure how self-publishing. Yeah, I'm not sure how self-publishing like on
which is a
Kindle's
lot
coming,
now.
but I do think But I do think to self-publish on Kindle, you still need to get an ISBN number, which would trigger some form of archiving. It might be that they're digitally archived rather than physically archived, but they will be archived.
I mean, it is.
My point is,
It is that
can be done.
we need an organization
But the challenge is
do it, which there
And
is
money.
one,
And
money.
lots and lots
Yeah,
of
because you
money.
can't go out of your way to buy all of them. Like there has to
No,
be
well,
some.
but
means.
I
That's
feel
in
like that's-
publishing, it works by default.
Isn't
In
that-
publishing? They don't buy them.
True.
isn't that gliding past the technological hurdle though of like the what makes games so unique in the archiving challenge is that just software
They're
and
optimized for particular
hardware.
kinds of hardware. Yeah, it's complicated.
But we're seeing hardware. We're seeing definitely software emulation hit levels where previous generations can be maintained, and now we're seeing hardware. You know, you can go now and buy a new N64 made third party that will play any of your N64 cartridges that you own,
Right.
as if it's an N64. Same with Game Boy. Analog's doing amazing work. Like there's theoretically that will continue now. Once we hit the moment in the industry where we started doing updates and software as a service became a thing, once we hit that stage in evolution, that might get a bit more tricky, obviously. But yeah, that's a massive hurdle. You're absolutely
Something
right.
being
Also,
complicated
books,
doesn't mean
obviously.
it can't be done, though. Obviously, like that's
My entire
yeah.
point.
Clearly.
It
can be done. Yeah.
if we decide to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
well,
I
and
just
this is
think
where-
the volume of games is where this. Again, I am saying that I think that they have a very unpopular thing, but I also thought it was interesting. Is the volume of games that are never going to be looked at is so high that the effort to preserve them could potentially be just the opposite of cost effective, because there are so many games come out that no one's ever even heard of.
But it's like an insurance policy. You don't think that every one of those 50 games a week is going to be culturally relevant or interesting, but you're assuming that 1 in 10,000 of them will be Austin's opera.
Yeah.
Right? There'll be something that made the effort worthwhile, but you have to track all of them in order to.
That's Spec Ops,
have
right?
that
Spec
thing.
Ops is not a huge budget video game. Everyone loves it. It's a huge cultural hit. It kind of sold that well in the grand scheme of things, but the fact that it is no longer able to be purchased is sad for its cultural relevance.
Plus, I see this as just it's part of that human instinct of so much of what we do is about saying, you know, I was here, I existed, I mattered
yeah.
to somebody, you know, I love it's one thing to go to you know, Italy, France, UK, a lot of, you know, Germany. There's a lot of great art museums that have all these, you know, Renaissance masters and whatnot. But I also really love going, you know, where you go to like the Getty Center and here's a spoon from ancient Greece. Yeah. Here's a plate, you know, where you just realize there's something equally powerful. I really love both sides of that. You know, I really love seeing, it's obviously very inspiring to see great artists at the highest level, you know, to stare directly at a Monet or something is astounding. Obviously not to be taken lightly, but also the idea that, you know, someone's grandmother made this teapot for solely pragmatic use, and now it's our link to that person from 2,000 years ago.
That's what we're shit at. That's what we're shit at archiving, is that stuff. And actually, even the creative process and the culture. I've talked to, like, I had a lovely coffee with curator of a big museum in the UK who's trying to get.
But how was the meeting?
Culturally. Say again?
Well, the coffee was good, but how was the meeting?
The coffee was great. The meeting was terrible. She was a horrible. No, it was lovely. But we were talking about how she's trying to gather historically relevant games ephemera, game development ephemera. I know the partners of several prominent game developers are like trying to archive their post-it notes and sheets of paper and the kind of the thought processes the way into work, because the people who are making this stuff don't think it matters because it's just work. It's just crap off their shelf, right? So we need to get better at this on several levels. I guess that's my point.
Yeah, I agree.
People don't know what's important
across the board. Yeah, and something being difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. And frankly, it's only difficult when you haven't sat down and put the time into figuring out how to do it most of the time, right?
It makes you wonder if, I have no idea if this is a technologically feasible concept, but my armchair, you know, Monday morning quarterback style conjecture is it would be interesting if someone could develop what would in effect be a file format. Oh, that's probably an overly reductive way to think of it, but some kind of system where once you've finished a game, all your code and all your assets could be essentially fed into this proprietary system that would then be able to keep it alive and accessible and archived, like essentially a system designed solely for this purpose. So it's not just a hard drive storing executables and stuff, but the idea is that it's its own storage medium essentially. Again, I'm speaking way out of my lane here, so I don't even know
Yeah,
the extent to which
because you have to also have a universal emulator, seemingly.
Which culturally we seem to be able to manage. Like the wonderful world of piracy and emulation has managed to keep up.
right.
So far.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
currently
that's what's-
doing a Pokemon Nuzlocke. Have either of you heard of this?
No,
Didn't think you would have. It's basically
Pokemon's one of my blind spots. I'm as much as I'm a nerd, I confess that it's one of my.
I think Pokemon had an age window because if you were too old, it was uncool, and it is what it is. I was right in that
She's
perfect
calling
age
you
group
old.
for it. Yeah, you're effectively too old for Pokemon, is what I'm saying, Austin. But
We're just a
basically,
little bit old though. No, you're absolutely right. Like my little sisters love it. Like I
Rahul
was
also
just too old.
was slightly too old for it, and me and my sister both loved it. That gap was not large; it was like 4 or 5 years. But basically, it's a version of Pokemon where part of Pokemon is you walk around, you catch Pokemon, and then you fight people with them. Usually, they faint if they get knocked out; they run out of health, and then you have to take them to a center where you get them healed again, but they're unavailable to use in fight before you get there. So if all of your Pokemon faint, then you'll be knocked out of fight and have to start from the start again. In a Nuzlocke, they all die, dead, can never be used again if they faint, which is extremely stressful because
the Iron Man mode from
Permadeath.
XCOM.
yeah, basically. And it is similar to XCOM because in a Nuzlocke you also have to name all of your Pokemon. You can't just be like, this
So
is
it's
my
extra
Charizard.
traumatizing, yeah.
Yeah, you have to give them names so that you have more of a personal connection to them. So I'm doing this Nuzlocke tournament right now where we have to play through Fire Red, the whole game, and then the Pokemon that we finish the game with, you can only finish with 6, we then take to this tournament on August 2nd where we have like a battle. Because I'd never done this before, this is my first time ever using an emulator. It's also, I guess it's opened up this like really interesting world that I didn't know existed of people have for years been modifying different versions of Pokemon to create these like little challenge games. So there's this really popular one called Pokemon Run and Bun. It's basically like they've taken Pokemon and made it Dark Souls just through like a hacked ROM that you run through an emulator. They've basically made entirely separate games using an emulator and a Pokemon ROM. And it's like so cool that modding community is so robust that it's an entirely different video game experience. As someone who's played most of the Pokemon mainline games, playing through a Nuzlocke is like playing a whole different genre of video game that couldn't exist back when it was playable on Game Boy. I don't remember what Fire Red was on, especially, but like I was playing mostly Pokemon Yellow, which was Game Boy Color. It's such a different thing, but it's so cool that was even able to happen. I'm sure Nintendo hates it, but the fact that like just someone figuring out, excuse me, sometimes you gotta sneeze mid-sentence. Someone figuring out how to make it so that they could play a Nintendo game on an emulator on a PC has opened up this whole extra world of video game that we would not have if someone hadn't put in the hard work to figure out how to do that. And it's incredibly cool. Like it's people are doing it full time. Is that their whole thing is that they just do these really challenging Pokemon games, again akin to like people who just play FromSoft games, and it's a massive ecosystem that is solely because someone put in the time to figure it out. And I feel like that's similar to your suggestion, Austin, is like if someone can just figure it out and we can just figure out how to do this in an easy way, that there are probably even benefits to it that we haven't even thought of yet in some way.
I mean, that is the classic outcome of these kinds of innovations is they are force multipliers because they open up doors that no one would conceive
Don't even
of.
know they exist. Yeah.
What we need to do is make every game into an NFT. And if we do that, it'll be all
Yes,
fine.
related.
Yes,
Somebody that I know, unnamed, who could say
Troy Baker again.
it's
Beat me
Troy
to it.
again, recently bought on Amazon.com a way to cheat Nintendo Amiibo. So it's basically like a little machine that you can scan on your Switch, and you get to choose which Amiibo you're scanning instead of having to buy all of them. Because really, Amiibo are just microtransactions made physical. They're very expensive. And if you're like trying to just like put them into video games to like you get certain unlocks if you're playing through certain games, that is a lot of money to spend. Especially because they're also limited. Some of them are hard to find. This person who figured out how to make a little like amiibo simulator that can scan every single amiibo with just like one little device.
I just like to personally say down the camera lens, I think that's a terrible thing.
Or it's
and
awful.
morally reprehensible, and we do not condone it.
Nobody should do it.
Nobody should do it.
Nobody should ever do that. I can't.
Piracy is a crime. Do not accept it.
We do not accept anybody going to Amazon.com and finding this device and doing this. Don't do it. Crazy though. That's a thing that somebody figured out how to do, which technically there are certain things that would be locked behind the fact that you can't find some of these amiibo anymore.
That would become lost media, essentially. Yeah. Those things, yeah.
Which is crazy because it's so modern. Anyway, yeah, I'll have a YouTube video about it either this week or next about Stop Killing Games, because it's also something that, like, you know, I'm just working on now, so there's a lot of answers
So you
I
have
don't
some
have.
Controversial takes that you want to share with the community as well.
Yeah, I need to get cancelled to get some more signatures. You know how it is.
That's how you get the Twitch numbers up.
Exactly. You gotta just get in some trouble. But yeah, apologies if we've misrepresented anything here in this cursory discussion. I don't think we have, though, but I will have a deep dive on it where, like I said, I reached out to 20 game developers to be like, what do you think of this? And the consensus is actually very consistent. There have been a few people who have like a couple of outlying opinions, but for the most part, it's been people really agreeing with each other across the board.
What is the general? Maybe I'm stepping on your video here, but is it generally a positive or a negative reaction?
Generally
to it
positive.
from developers? Yeah, I would have thought so.
Yeah, like which is why I think Pirate Software like angled as though he was coming from the perspective of a game developer, which is not true. But it was that's kind of why I wanted to reach out to a bunch of game devs to be like, is this a game dev consensus or is it just this particular person? And it seems like a lot of the game devs are a lot more sympathetic to what he's trying to say than the public is, and it seems like, I mean, that's the internet, isn't it? But yeah, virtually everybody is for it across the board. You're like, yeah, it's doable. There'll be some things that are complicated. There's some things I don't like, but it's doable. So it's been interesting to look into.
Nice.
On that note, everybody, thanks for watching Play, Watch, Listen. It's been a minute since we had the three of us together. It's lovely to have you back, Austin.
Sorry to have been AWOL.
It's fine. We've had
last
some
time.
conversations about firing you. We could talk about that offline.
Yeah.
Yeah, thinking
That's
about
fine.
finally
I
bringing in
insist
Grant
on
Kirkhope.
I insist on a dramatic severance package. And then
Oh,
it's
yeah,
fine.
but, well, okay. Well, Troy didn't get one of those, so I don't know about that.
Well, I clearly have, better representation and management.
Yeah, fair. I'm see you guys next time. Bye.
Took me a
I
second
don't
to
even say
realize what
words
that was.
anymore.